I guess there's multiple facets. Like there's like the death test, I like to call it. But basically, like if you died at a certain age, what people would say, what a shame, you know?
Yeah.
It's like if you died in your 50s, like you're not young, but people would be like, you died young, you know?
Yeah.
If you die in your 60s, people will be like, well, it's not like a shame, I guess, but it's still kind of early. It's like in your 70s and 80s, and you're kind of like,
it was coming.
It was coming. Like you wake up every day like, oh, I'm alive. I can fulfill my plans for the day. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Nuanced Nonsense. We're not experts, but we just like talking. And this is the first episode that we'll be filming with a new setup. A couple episodes back, we yes, peep the waves. They got a background now. But yeah, a couple episodes back, we talked about our new setup, and this is the first actual episode that we'll be filming with our new setup. So once again, thank you to John Lee for providing us with the stand, and thank you to at the Brian He and at EJ Noodles for doing the song and the animation for us.
Yes. And so on to the show. So me and Alex like came in like after we'd started a little bit, but my friend and I had just finished watching Grave of the Fireflies, and I was just like, bro. Yeah. Like, I hate to bag on this movie because it actually was really good. I really did like it.
For sure.
But I was just like, dude, this guy, like, I'm not gonna lie, I thought his decisions were kind of fucking dumb.
Yeah, I mean, watching the film, it was just painful because a lot of the characters did like not good stuff, you know? Like the aunt, this is spoilers alert.
Yeah.
Should have said that earlier, but yeah, the aunt, was super passive aggressive about stuff, and then she took all their food, and then like I guess she like rationed it like proportionally, but like she was super ungrateful about it,
Yeah, and like when he brought all these luxury food items to their door, she was like, "Oh, this is so nice. You're so like I'm so grateful for the Navy because they get such good stuff in wartime, And then they eat it all, and then like since there's 3 adults and then 2 kids, adults eat much more, right? And then so the rations for those foods are like gone much faster than the 2 kids expect. And then like at some point in the movie, they're like, "Oh, are there any pickled plums left?" And then the aunt is like, "No, they were gone a long time ago." It's just like stuff like that. Like she's not even remorseful for like taking most of it when none of it was hers.
Yeah, but it was just frustrating because like I think a big part of the film is pride. Like eventually she keeps on insulting them and saying like you don't do anything for this country, you're just a bunch of bums, and they can't take it,
Yeah.
So they just leave. But because they leave, they don't have any they're not working, they don't have any shelter. The shelter's like a cave. So, the younger sister dies of malnutrition, and I think he just gives up after that, and then he dies.
Yeah.
But honestly, watching, I'm like, this is really sad, and I understand why war is bad. Like, I shouldn't have put these kids in this situation, but like this whole film could have been avoided if you just sucked it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that made me I was reading on Wikipedia. Like, honestly, like when a lot of Japanese people saw this film, they resonated with the main character. Because pride is a very big thing. Like, it's all about saving face. But like when Americans watch it, they're like, this kid's an idiot, right? And I was like, well, we are Americans, and I did think this kid was an idiot. But yeah, I don't know. Like, how do you think like cultural differences like affects like people's like perceptions of like values and like films?
Yeah, like I was talking to Alex about this before we started recording, but like there's some aspect of this movie that like I'll never be able to understand personally. Like I live in such a privileged period of time where I can joke about World War III. Like just the idea that I'm joking about World War III makes it so that like whatever my experience is, it is like completely not relevant to like their experiences. They're so vastly different. And not saying that like my opinion is invalid, but it's hard for me to imagine a world in which that they're living in, And so like the difference in culture is also like something tied into that, because like the Asian culture, like even though I am Asian, I did not grow up in Asia. So that makes it that I don't like really understand their culture. Like whatever my parents imprinted onto me, that's all of it that I understand. Like, do I even practice most of it? No.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like honestly, if you were born here, your parents probably think a little differently too.
Yeah.
Like they thought a little differently to even want to leave, right? But yeah, I was telling Ben about this, but like at first glance, like you're like the pride thing seems so simple and stupid, but like there's like a little personal anecdote in my life. So like the other day, my parents, had a little fight about like the bill, but it kind of showcased like my dad's pride and like how he didn't he wanted to like show that he could provide for his family. But basically the whole gist was like one day like my parents were like in like Arlington. They were celebrating a friend's 60th birthday. So but they also had a family friend who lives in Arlington already. So they were like, okay, like we'll just stop by and visit this family. And so they stop by, they get dinner together, and the husband of the family pays for everyone's dinner. And I guess everyone has seen the meme where like you fight for the bill or something, but like everyone thinks that's a joke, right? It's like it's funny that like they're taking it so seriously. Well, my dad took it very personally, but he's not the type of person to yell or scream. Like he's a very like mild-mannered guy. So he just like took it personally, but just didn't say anything. So he internalized it. And then but so he like remember, like for him, like he was saying later that like, oh, like these people, like they don't trust us, like they hid their phones in their room because they thought like our friends were gonna steal like their phones. Like it was all this nonsensical stuff that didn't make sense. But this wouldn't surface later until like maybe like a week or a couple of days later when so my parents, like they lease out, like they rent out a house for some people. I guess it's just it's a side hustle basically. But so basically the family, well, according to my parents at least, like only the dad's working. They have like multiple kids, so they can never pay rent on time. So my parents are always like, this has been going on for like 2 years. So my parents are like always calling them and like being like, the guy is always begging them like, hey, just give me more time, And then my parents are like, I mean, they're like not patient, but for whatever reason, I guess they've let it happen.
Patient for 2 years.
They were patient for 2 years. Like this is not a new sight in the Lung household. So basically, but this time my parents were really pissed because he keeps on calling us over, or my parents over, for maintenance for the apartments, like air conditioning will break down or whatever ish happens. So then basically, he is unhappy about the house not being like to his standard. My parents are unhappy that he can't pay rent, but they have to spend their own money to repair for this house, because they own it. So then the guy started sounding kind of entitled when my mom was like, hey, you need to pay the rent. So my mom started yelling at him, and my mom has a short temper, so it can come off as kind of scary. So she was like losing it, and then she was like screaming really loudly, and then the dude hangs up, and then he calls my dad, because my dad is not likely to yell at you even if he's mad at you. He would just resent you like secretly for the rest of his life. But that's a different story. So then basically that happens, and then my dad's trying to work things out, but my mom's yelling in the background. My dad's basically just like, hey, you need to shut up. Like, we need to figure this out. There's no point in yelling. We're not going to get our money back if we just kick him out now. And then after the call ends, like, they kind of like bicker a little bit, just like, like, why can't you just be calm and collected? Why have to be like this? And then my dad starts, digging stuff up, like, just like how like passive aggressive people work, like, they'll be like, hey, well, you did this one thing that offended me, and I'm not over it, People typically attribute this to girls, but, I guess my dad does this too. But basically, he was so upset about the Arlington incident. So then he was saying, like, you do stuff all the time without telling me, and then, I've had enough of this. Like, I'm not going back to that city. I'm not going to see these people anymore. Like, they're your friends. They treat you well, not me, or some stuff. And then my mom's like, it's like, you're trying to like count this against me. And then she's like, what's wrong? And then he basically starts telling how like he was so upset that like they paid the bill for him, and he's like, so why couldn't I do it? And then after this, my mom usually doesn't back on this stuff because she's very strong-headed, but then even then she was like, is this guy okay? So then she's like that's not what happened. So she basically, it turns into a counseling session for my dad. So then So then my mom, basically they work it out. But then, I'm just sitting on the other side of the room. Like, they're yelling in Cantonese really fast. I only can pick up, like, half of what's going on. So I understood, like, the beginning stuff, but I didn't really understand, like, why he was upset. So then I was like, so afterwards, my mom was just like, she went to go get we have, like, a massage machine. So she was getting, like, her back massage or something. So I was like, Mom, like, what's going on? Like, why did this happen? And then she was like, she kind of, like beckoned me, like, secretly, and she's like, your dad was upset they didn't pay the bill. And I was like, that's it? Like, I thought it was something like she invited them over without telling him, which is like, I'm not gonna say that's like a reason for, like, a big fight, but it's more
arguably worse.
It's more understandable, right? But then, yeah, she was like, he's very, like, he doesn't earn any money, so he's, like, he's very ashamed of that. He wants to prove that, like, he can take care of his family. And
Wait,
I realized,
I thought he does earn money.
Or he doesn't earn money from a traditional job. Like, he trades stocks. So, yeah, that's basically how he earns money. Even then, he's always like, hey, don't tell anyone. Or, like, don't tell anyone how much money I make from stocks. And I'm like, okay, Dad. But, Asian parents are very paranoid. But, so he's very, I guess, like, the thing is, like, his source of income is not stable, I guess. It depends on, the stock market has been up and down in 2019. So I guess for him, he's like, oh, like, this is him basically thinking that I can't provide for my friends and family. But, to me, this was a shock because, like, I don't really care if someone offers to pay the bill. In fact, I welcome it, Like, if someone pays the bill, I'm like, go for it, man.
Yeah, dude, whenever someone offers, I'm just like, bruh, count me in.
Like, I'm not gonna, I'll fight. I'll be like, oh, you sure? Like, I can pay you back. And if they say no, I'm not fighting, But, like, yeah, it was like, then there I realized, like, dang, I didn't realize, like, Asian pride and, like, saving face and, like, even just, like, traditional gender roles, like, they meant so much to Asian culture.
Yeah.
And, like, obviously, like, these aren't, like, the positive aspects of the culture. But I guess that was the time I realized, like, hey, like, I need to be more understanding. Like, this is, like, how my dad raised me and how, like, he expects me to live my life in college is, like, reflective of his values, right? When he's always like, you need to make sure you can get a good job so you can take care of your family. Honestly, like, I'm thinking more in terms of myself, but he's thinking in terms of my future family that I don't think I'm going to have, but he thinks I'm going to have. But yeah, because of, like, that incident, sorry, this has been a long recounting bit. I kind of had more sympathy for the main character because I was like, honestly, Asian pride is all about saving face. In the context of the story, like, he was, like, an 8th grader, like, he's 14 or something.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't that mature. He probably lived in a fairly privileged background because his dad was in the Navy. And then, so he
they
probably...
had a big house. Yeah. They had access to all of these, like, luxury food items.
Yeah, so they probably were like, hey, like, I don't deserve this treatment, So he just kind of rushes out. He doesn't know any better. Because, like, the sad thing is that the whole story is in the span of 6 months. Like, yeah, so...
Like, to put it very bluntly, he causes his sister to die in 6 months.
Yeah, but then, like, he thinks it's something dramatic when he sees the doctor, like, because his sister is, like, slowly dying. He's like, she's just malnourished. She just needs food,
Yeah, he's like, can't you give her medicine, like a shot or something? He's like, and the doctor's like, medicine is food.
Yeah, like, to the doctor, it's probably not even that big of a deal,
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's kind of crazy because, like, in the film, like a farmer who's, like, helps him out a bit is like, hey, just swallow your pride. Just say sorry and y'all will be fine. But he never does. And then I think that sparked a lot of debate. Like, because for them to be like, this kid's an idiot, like, the whole film could have been avoided.
Yeah.
We were reading some discussions on Reddit.
It was super back and forth. Like, a lot of people, like, it similar to, like, that Wikipedia thing that said, like, Western audiences didn't like it as much because they thought, like, they don't think of the concept as pride nearly as deeply as, like, Eastern culture, I guess. Not to, like, say any prejudice against either culture, but, like, it's just more prevalent in Eastern culture. And so, like, they can't resonate with something that doesn't exist in their own culture.
For sure. So, yeah. So then I just thought that was interesting because, like, our first instinct was to be like, this kid's an idiot.
Yeah,
and we're also raised in America.
Yeah.
So that made me think, like, hey, like, a lot of times people talk about, like, respecting cultural differences, but then, like, even then people would just be like, well, like, this is a bad thing about cultural differences, right? Like they need to understand about this and that, But I'm like, that's something that we were raised with. That's something like they believe in. Like, another example, like, I find this crazy, but like the East considers human rights as a Western concept.
Oh, you're talking about like China?
Yeah. So like when we were like, I was reading stuff about Hong Kong, they're like, yeah, like human rights, like democracy, like we deserve the right to rule ourselves. A common rebuttal against that, like the Chinese I would use, is that like that's a Western concept. You're being influenced by the West. Like you need to be loyal to like your roots, the East.
Oh, that's also similar to like the Crazy Rich Asians. Like family means more than your individual like desires or wants and our freedom.
Yeah.
Like I have a collection of Eastern like philosophical texts, like The Art of War and like some other things by Confucius, and like it's super like strange. Like the idea of harmony within your family trumps everything else, and then like, or rather like harmony amongst like the group is more important than harmony for the individual. So it's like at the lowest level it's like harmony for the individual, and then a level above that it's like harmony like amongst your family, and then like harmony amongst like your community, and then harmony amongst the nation, right? That trumps everything. So like I can see why like human rights don't matter as much, because it could negatively influence the harmony of the nation.
I think that's interesting because like human rights sounds like a very individualistic ideal, like framed in that concept.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I care about myself, right? But then like they still care about the good of the people, but it has to be framed as the greater good of the people, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the idea of the like, you know, would you sacrifice a person for the many? You know, like we watched the film recently, like Wedding with You.
Oh yeah, we can go into that.
Yeah, you know, not a spoiler, but basically
this is just a spoiler like opinion segment on anime. Period.
Yeah, so basically if we bring a film, yeah, we're spoiling the plot.
We already have with like Bunny Girl Senpai movie.
Yeah, so yeah. But basically in that film, like, you know, this girl can control the weather, but whenever like her ability is linked to like, I guess there's consequences for her actions. So the more she uses her power, the worse the weather gets, and eventually she's sacrificed, and then
to calm the weather
down, and everyone's happy because now it's sunny. They don't know any of this. The main character does, and he's like,
bro, fuck everyone.
Yeah, he's like, I want my girl back, basically. So Tokyo is basically raining forever then, and once he brings her back, and then, yeah, I guess at the end of the film, they're kind of left with the question, like, was this worth it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, in that case, like, I feel like we're kind of taught in society, like, hey, like, you should sacrifice yourself for, like, our country, for the greater good, right? But I feel like given, like, that question yourself, it's a little harder, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, actually, now that you bring it up, that goes against Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
To rescue one person against the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that the film was targeted at a Western audience.
Was it? Or do you think it could have been targeted to like the Japanese who were...
Or maybe it was just targeted at like a young audience. Because I think these like Western, like Eastern like influences are less like impactful to like this day's young. With like so much access to internet, you can kind of like develop your own like opinions. And like I'm not saying that everyone develops their own opinion, because I feel like a lot of like misconception on the internet. However, like I feel like the internet has its own culture, and that's what young people have these days, is internet culture, not like East, West, like North, South, like culture.
Interesting. Because like I feel like when you phrase it like that, it's almost like the internet is what brings everyone together, you know? And like there's just one big culture. But then that kind of makes me think that like if your friend went to like a different state then like, or a different city, and you're like you had a long distance friendship or long distance relationship with them, like wouldn't it in theory still be like nothing has changed, because like their culture in that city, in that state is the same as the one you have?
I mean, supposedly, right? Because like, for example, nowadays, like if like the internet teaches you to be like skeptical, like cynical, but also like to search out like actual resources and like actual information and not believe misinformation. Like I think that's like a huge part of like internet culture these days. Like for example, Reddit, like that's really pervasive within Reddit. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but just like a lot of people are like, fact check yourself, you know, like make sure what you're saying is like accurate or like to some degree like trustworthy. And so that pervades internet culture a lot. I mean, there's a lot of scams, and I think that's part of the reason why internet culture is like this.
I think it's hard to say because a lot of us were raised before the internet. Actually, I guess we were raised right as the internet became pretty huge. Like we were always around the internet, but I guess we still remember when the internet wasn't that great.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, but I don't know because I feel like when you're first I guess for like millennials and Gen Z, like when you're first raised, like you still have influence from outside the internet, like for your parents and your family or your friends. But then the internet can help you as another group, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, like when you're young, your influence is only your family. You get out, you see your friends, then you see like, I don't know, your coworkers or something. And now like I think now with technology you have the internet. So I don't know, like I just feel like even if the internet is kind of like the global unifier, like it still might be different because like there's a big barrier with language,
Yeah.
Like Japanese internet culture and Korean internet culture I think is very different from American internet culture,
I mean, probably.
Yeah, because like I remember like whenever there's K-pop stars and they do something bad, there's always this phrase like, oh, the netizens will get on their ass, right? But like in America, like they probably wouldn't do that. Like say like,
wait, are you kidding? We have cancel culture. It's the same thing.
But not quite, because netizens were there before cancel culture. Like the netizens aren't canceling these people though. They're just giving them a lot of criticism. I mean, they may have to apologize, but no one's like losing their job.
Oh, so you're saying cancel culture is more extreme?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a different way of like expressing criticism. And to be fair, like okay, even in like high school, like the netizen stuff was always there.
Okay, that's fair.
But they would.
They're like out to get you.
I feel like it's different because like I don't know, because I feel like the K-pop stars just said an apology. I guess they didn't do it again, but they didn't like
to like appease the netizens.
Yeah, but they didn't like lose their job,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like they just continued acting. But I mean, I'm not saying like cancel culture is worse because I feel like in East Asian culture it's very strict on the appearances and stuff like that. Like, a lot of it is about like your image, So I think it's like different in different ways.
Yeah. But so it still does tie back to kind of like saving face.
Yeah, for sure. Like I guess like how the culture you're in, I think affects how you use the internet. Because the internet is really just an extension of your how you interact with people.
Fair.
But it just cuts away distance, right? Like you can even think about like if we didn't have the internet right now, even in college, like that means you wouldn't be able to like talk to people like down the street,
Oh, you're right. You'd have to meet up in person.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And it's like, I don't really know how people in the 80s really did it, but they had phones.
Yeah. But that's for the rich. Like in the Grave of the Fireflies movie, like I saw some people talking about how like they're like, oh, why didn't he just contact his other relatives? But that's like I feel like a lack of understanding of like the time period, right? Like the main character said, I don't have their address.
Yeah.
Not having someone's address meant you literally could not contact them via letter.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere for that letter to go. There's no outgoing like source. So there's like it literally meant he was cut off from all of them.
Yeah. And it's like we were watching a Dave show. I was watching a Dave Chappelle special at least, and then he was like, back in the old days, there's such thing as divorce. You just said, "Baby, I'm gonna get a pack of cigarettes. I'll be right back." And you just left the clothes on your back, and you could start a new life 11 miles away. That's literally the same city, That's how big like your city is. But now we have like, we have like Google Maps. We have the internet. I know it sounds like I'm repeating the same thing over and over again, but it's just like distance feels smaller now. But
yeah,
I guess that's all what it can really be used for by itself, Like, I guess like what I'm trying to say is like, if your friend moves away to like Minnesota or something and we're in Texas, like they're still gonna think differently, I guess, or like become different because like the new environment they're in is going to be different, Like it's hard to like, because I guess like what you said earlier was kind of like, oh, the internet is like a bridge basically. So like it's basically like there's almost no distance at all, right? But like it shortens distance but it doesn't eliminate it, you know.
Oh, I see. That's fair. That's a fair point.
I guess that's my point of view. Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, now that I think about it more, you're right. There is no singular internet culture. However, the internet is like a major influence in what helps develop your own beliefs.
For sure. I think it's just more like, if I want to like fact check something, or like I want to like treat myself or help myself, then like I can just go look it up real quick on my phone or my computer versus like walking to the library or like, you know, like having to rely on like your network, like your personal network.
Your actual network.
Yeah. So now it's like, yeah, but I guess it's like still like it's difficult to like. I mean, I guess some people make friends on the internet, like not having seen them before. Maybe they play games or something.
Oh yeah, that's another part of internet culture that we're not super involved with.
Yeah.
That is like super common.
Yeah. So I guess that is possible, but yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I just remember like, you know, there's another film directed by Makoto Shinkai, 5 centimeters per second.
Ooh.
Like even then, like, you know, like when he and the girl he
Spoiler
likes,
alert again.
he and the girl he likes were like messaging each other after she moved away. Eventually the conversation dried up and I think she stopped replying, or it's implied she stopped replying because like they were just talking about people neither party knew, you know, like they ran out of things to talk about. So I guess in a way it's like distance still plays a pretty big role in like relationships, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. Like 5 centimeters per second is like, I feel like this is completely tangent, but like 5 centimeters per second is like Makoto Shinkai's like last super sad. Like,
What about Garden of Words?
Garden of Words was like sad.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't watched Garden of Words.
Garden of Words was sad, but it had like this certain style about it, you know? Like, you know how like people cried while watching Your Name? It was sad, but it wasn't like 5 centimeters per second sad. Like that was literally just like a super sad ending. You're just like, damn.
I get what you're saying. It's like what you're saying is like there are sad moments in the film for like Your Name, but it's not a sad film. It has to have an ending. But like Grave of Fireflies, like that's a sad film because it's bleak the whole time. I know like, that reminds me of the. Oh, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna be like, I didn't cry during Grave of Fireflies, but I was just like Alex said it earlier while we were watching. He's like, yeah, this makes me sad and mad.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so true, because I'm like mad that like all this shit is happening to like these kids, and it like these kids are being dumb, but then also sad because like this is just like fucked. Like they shouldn't have to go through this.
For sure. Like they should never have been put in the position.
Yeah.
It's kind of like kids. The reason why like we have all these rules about like how old should a kid be before they can like consent. You know, how old should they be before they work? Is like you're just not mature enough to like figure that stuff out for yourself. You know, I guess maybe the laws are arbitrary, but like I understand, you know, for sure. But you know, it kind of reminds me of I don't know, just like yeah, I guess like you kind of talked about like this is not related to anime right now, but remember how like I guess we were kind of reminiscing that like we're about to graduate college, you know, and then we're like, yeah, we should still talk, you know, after college. You know? Like we're pretty good friends. Then you're like, I guess you said like, yeah, we should see each other like once every 2 years. I was like, once every 2 years? Like, what about every year at least, right? And then you're like, I mean, it's hard to like see like people once you grow up. You're like your dad sees his friends like once every 10 years.
Yeah, like my dad was telling me, he's like, once you get older, he's like, you don't see your friends like every day. He's telling me like you start to see your friends in increasingly longer increments, like years, and then like you start like my dad was telling me like if I saw my friends every 2 years, I'd think that was short. And that was like blew my mind. And so that's why I suggested that like number to Alex. But then like I'm not saying that you don't have perspective, but I'm just like it just is like it's just
it's different.
It's different.
Yeah. So for me, it's like I've if I don't talk to a friend for like 6 months, or I don't see him for 6 months, I'm like, that's a really long time. And I'm like, okay, like I should treasure this time I see him for the 6 months. But then you're like, oh, every 2 years, you know, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, like it feels long to me, I guess, because like 2 years out of 21 is
10% of your life.
It's 10% of my life. But then 2 years out of like 50 to someone else is like
4%.
Yeah, it's not much to them. But yeah, I guess like that kind of made me think about when we were talking about like 5 centimeters per second. That's what I thought about, because I guess when the internet was created, they probably had all these high hopes that like, we can like, you know, with like Skype and stuff like that, like, hey, like distance doesn't matter, like we can have our friendships just like it is, you know. But in the end, I guess like things still are the same, you know. Yeah, it was because I remember like when I was young, when, like Facebook came out and stuff, like I was like, oh, maybe our generation is gonna be different, you know. Like maybe like we'll still know our high school friends pretty well, we'll still know like our childhood town or whatever pretty well. But then like as I realized I got older, it's like I don't even talk to most of my high school friends, you know. It's
hard. You have to like put a lot of effort to do that.
Yeah,
it's like really difficult to maintain, especially if you're not in the same proximity.
For sure. It's like that's something I realized that like I think we talked about this before, but like for friendship is like proximity and like, you know, like what stage of life you're in, like interests, values and humor, like those play a really big role in your friendship. But especially the first two I mentioned, like proximity and like the stage of life you're in. It's like, because I remember like my mom, like she had kids like relatively later. Like she wasn't like late. Like she gave birth to me at 27. So
that's fine.
That's fine. But like compared to her friends in Hong Kong, they were having kids at like, I don't know, like straight after college or something, like 21, 22. Oh. Basically Ben and I's age right now.
Oh fuck, bro.
But they were having kids, so then I guess they couldn't really hang out with her because they were like raising the kid. So then basically like she was like, oh well, I have to have a social life, so I was elsewhere, I guess, because she didn't meet my dad yet. So then basically she just hung out with older people, and then I thought that was interesting because I guess in some weird way, like her original friends were the ones the same age as her, like they were in a different life stage, so they weren't really. I mean, I guess they were still friends, but they weren't as close anymore. But then my mom, I guess instead of my mom hanging out with people literally in her life stage, she like jumped like 2 or 3 life stages ahead and hung out with like older retired people, which was like,
well, that's really far ahead.
That's interesting to me because like even at like church when like they eat lunch with people, like because my church like serves food for lunch, my parents will a lot of times eat with like old like grandparents, you know.
Interesting.
And I'm kind of like, I'm like 15 at the time. I'm just like, where are my parents' friends, like their age, you know. I mean, occasionally, like, people, like, around their age, or maybe a little older, will, like, eat with them, but I'm like, I think it's very interesting how, like, because, like, when I was young, because, like, when you're our age, we're, like, all our friends are around our age, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's just weird seeing, like, I can be friends with someone 20 years older than me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I don't know. Shit's fucking wild to me. Like, I can't wrap my head around, like, these types of things quite yet. But, like, I feel like as time moves forward and it just marches on, like, I'll slowly get a grasp of it. Mm-hmm. Like, I think when college ends, it'll sort of just, like, be thrust in our faces and we'll have to, like, come to terms with it.
Yeah.
Because, like, people go all over the place. It's, like, incredibly difficult to see each other. Like, working schedules make you super tired. Your vacations are, like, you don't have set vacations. You just go on vacation whenever the fuck you want. And then that means you have to be incredibly intentional with like who you want to see in that time. You can't just like take time off and then just like come back home and go like, oh yeah, I'll just like wing it. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess like that's why when people ask me like, are you excited to graduate? I'm like,
not really.
I don't know, man. Like, I'm not really looking forward to that life. Because I'm kind of like, how do you meet people post-grad? I mean, if you're religious, I guess there's church, but like, if you're not religious, like, you have to make friends another way, right?
Like, even if you are religious, like, I'm sure you'd want to make friends outside of church.
Yeah. So that's also, like, what I was thinking, too. I was like, I mean, I don't want to be completely dependent on, like, church as, like, my main friend group, especially since, like, I kind of want to treat church as with more of, like, a religious intentionality. Not that, like, I don't want to be friends with, like, other Christians. I just don't want to come there just for the sake of making friends, you know?
Fair.
But I don't know how to do that. So that's my dilemma. I mean, I know like if you have a hobby or something, you can form a community around that, right? But I don't know if I want to join a hobby just for the friends, you know? Because then.
But a lot of people do that. You gotta ride the wave.
So is it okay? If a lot of people
I think it's okay. Like Alex sent me this manga chapter that like I don't know what it was even like from. I just read what it was about because it was sort of like self-isolated. And it was about this kid, and he like didn't know how to make friends, and he was this is his middle school, like at the point in time where he's talking, and then he's going to high school, right? And he's like, I need to change my life. I need to make friends because like this fucking sucks not having friends. And so he like wants to go out and meet new friends, but he doesn't know how. So he's like, okay, he attaches like his value of like friendship to like events, right? So he was like, if I go to this bowling event, it will change my whole high school. I'll make a bunch of friends, yada, yada, yada. And same thing with like this other soccer club that he went to. And he really enjoyed the soccer club, but he's like, fuck, like I'm not here because I care about soccer. I'm here for the friends. And he felt very disingenuous, and so he stopped going. And then like on top of that, he wanted to buy soccer cleats simply because he's like, oh, like I don't like having these shitty ones. And so like he went to his grandpa's place because his grandpa would give him pocket money every single time he went, and eventually he saved that up to buy soccer cleats. But then he also felt disingenuous there because he's like, I'm not going to see my grandpa, I'm going because he's giving me money. But then in the end, like his grandpa like collapses and he's about to go to that bowling event, and he's like, I'm gonna change my life. He's like, you know, fuck that. Like my grandpa might die. Like this might be the last time I see him. If I go to that bowling event, that shows I don't care. And so he goes to see his grandpa, and his grandpa's like, it's just a minor injury, but he still came, and he's like, holy fuck. Like, I'm so glad you're alive. And then he explains himself. He's like, I feel like a fraud. I'm like, so sorry, grandpa. And his grandpa's like everyone starts out like for a surface level thing, right? Because like in the end, you have your own passion, and that's why you're here. And so it's like the overall message is that like you can start for like a superficial reason. However, in the end, like eventually it will evolve into something else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, you're the one that sent that to me.
Yeah, I did send that to you because I related to the main character, you know? And I guess we both kind of did in some way, where like, because I guess we've talked about on the podcast to an extent, but like, I guess we both struggled with like friendship and community a lot growing up. So yeah, the feeling of like being alone in the crowd, or like feeling like I'm not good enough, like that really hit me in the heart. So I was like, I resonate with this man. So I was like, I gotta send it to Ben. Ben didn't read it for like a long time. I had to like literally remind him every day, like, hey, read this manga. But that's true. It's you have to, I guess everyone starts somewhere, but I don't know. I guess even if like I know something is true, it takes me a while to like fully accept it, you know?
Oh, that's fair.
Like, it's like it's not a saying, but it's like, just because you like hear about something once doesn't mean you fully understand it. Yeah,
it's like the same reason why like how if you tell someone something is bad, they might not even believe you. They'll just go ahead and do it because like they haven't experienced that it's bad, right? In their head, there's something subconsciously going like, hey, it's not actually that bad. They're just giving you like a horror story. And then you do it and you're like, fuck, this sucks. And then you're like, oh, so that's why. And then you make the mistake and then you live and you learn.
For sure. I think I don't know. I think something like I guess like that's why I'm just not ready to graduate, or I don't feel like I'm ready to graduate because like I'm just scared about being too old to try these things, you know? But I realize like it's silly because I'm 21. I'll be 21 when I graduate college. I turned 22 like shortly before I start work. So I'm like, it's an unfounded fear, I guess. But I just remember every year in college, I've always been like, I'm too old to do this, you know, I gotta focus on school. And then the next year I see someone who a year younger than me or 2 years younger than me, like at that point in my life, do something. I'm like, oh, I wasn't too old to do it. But now I'm like, oh, now I'm actually old. And then I move on and then like, I wasn't. So now I'm just like, I guess I'm kind of at the point where I'm just like, it doesn't really matter, you know? But I don't know, man. It's that's why like I feel like I think a lot about like, what does it mean to have youth? What does it mean to be a young person, you know?
I think it's a relative thing.
Yeah. Because, like, for some people, like, our age, we're like, oh, that man's 27? He's so old. But then, like, if he dies, I'm going to be like, dang, he was only 27.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, so I'm like, you know, I guess there's multiple facets. Like, there's, like, the death test, I like to call it. But basically, like, if you died at a certain age, well, people would say, what a shame, you know?
Yeah.
So if you died in your 50s, like, you're not young, but people would be like, you died young, you know?
Yeah.
If you die in your 60s, people would be like, well, it's not like a shame, I guess, but it's still kind of early. It's like in your 70s and 80s, and you're kind of like...
It was coming.
It was coming. Like, you wake up every day like, oh, I'm alive. I can fulfill my plans for the day.
Yeah, like, Alex also told me this, and he was like, yeah, I expect to wake up and fulfill my plans.
It's like, I remember reading about this basketball player who died a long time ago. Not long, maybe it was maybe recent, but he was like only 28. And Wikipedia said he died of natural causes in his sleep. And I was like, natural causes? You can die of natural causes that young? And I was like, your heart can just stop? Like, because 28, I'm like, that's the prime of an athlete.
Yeah.
So technically, he should have been a very healthy man. But he just died, you know? I mean...
It's just wild.
And the thing is, like, a lot of people talk about how, like, oh, I want to die in my sleep because that's, like, peaceful, right? And, like, that's understandable, but I'm kind of just like, do I really want to die when, like, I'm, like, thinking about how I'm so excited for the next day?
Yeah.
Or not, but I'm just like, here's what I'm going to do for the rest of the week, you know? And, like, I don't know, to me, like, that's kind of unnerving, you know?
Yeah, that shit, I like, it's just weird, like, planning something and then not being able to show up to it. Yeah. Like, another thing, I showed a friend, Kimi no Nawa, and you know the body switching bit of that, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about, like, I would hate switching bodies because, like, just imagine being late to all of your plans and not knowing jack shit about any of these plans. Like, when they first switched bodies, like, he was just like, where do I go to work? Like, how do I even get to school? Like, I'm late for everything. Like, dude, that shit would, like, it makes me, like, just fucking to, like, be late to everything on, like, just a normal day. Imagine, like, being late to stuff you don't even know.
Yeah.
That shit is stressful as fuck.
Yeah. But I could definitely feel that. Like, you're literally, like, a stranger in your own world. The crazy thing is some people probably feel like that and they don't switch their body to someone else. It's a rough life. But yeah, speaking of Kimi no Nawa, I just thought it was interesting how it depicted it was like an urban, like a city boy versus like a rural farm.
I mean, to be fair, Weathering with You also is urban, like, versus rural. Because remember, Hodoka is from a rural area.
From a rural area. They just don't explore.
They don't explore his side of it. It's just that he comes to Tokyo and he's like, fuck, I don't know jack shit about Tokyo. He's like, I'm gonna fucking sleep in, like, this random alley.
Yeah. For sure. But I guess it was just interesting because, like, in Kimi no Nawa, they depict city life as, like, it's just whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I guess...
It's routine.
I guess Taki-kun takes it for granted, you know? He's like, I just gotta do what I gotta do. But Mitsuha is like, I'm so bored of this place, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I think it's something I always like to ask people, like, would you rather travel to, like a nature-y place, like rural, or, like, the city, you know? Because, like, I feel like that says a lot about you as a person. Like, it doesn't really matter what your answer is. Like, it doesn't mean you're any less of a person if you pick one answer. I just think it's interesting because I think it reflects, like, your values, like, as a person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, for you, like, what would you rather do?
Like, I do want to go to these nature places, but for me, it's about feasibility. And I guess that does say a lot about my personality, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, I go to these cities because it's more feasible. It's easier to get around. There's more things to do, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. If you go to these nature places, like, it becomes, like, exponentially harder to get around, especially if you're in a different country. Like, it complicates a lot of things that, like, a lot of people don't have time to worry about. Yeah. So I guess, like, you could say, like, I'm not willing to, like, take the extra step and do that. But it's just, like, at the same time, like, I value, like, feasibility.
So for you, it's like, because I think, so what it sounds like is like, okay, so, like, because, like, you're willing to go to, like, the city because they have means of transportation, convenient means of transportation. So, like, so for you is like, it's a matter about convenience and I guess flexibility in a way, right?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because you're like, because, like, if you go to the rural area or nature area, it's like you lose flexibility because there's only so many options.
Yeah, like, what if you don't like it? You're fucking stuck there.
Yeah, but I guess if you were to go to, like, a nature area, like, what would you probably do in a vacation?
I feel like I like looking at nature things. Like, one of the things I liked doing growing up was just, like, taking hikes in, like, these random, like, wooded areas and just, like, go into areas that people don't normally go into. Like, there's this place I used to go into with a friend. Like, it's like a trail and there's, like, some, like, dirt trails that, like, lead into it. But then I always just, like, stray off the trail and, like, literally go into the forest and, like, find random bullshit, like, look at random bullshit, jump on rocks, cross rivers, like, I liked doing that. However, it's not always possible to do that shit.
Yeah, that's true. That sounds like a very anime-esque childhood, you know?
It is.
Like a very Studio Ghibli-esque childhood where, like, they're just playing in, like, the backyard, which is a forest.
Yeah.
And like they're like I don't know, they're playing like Tarzan or some shit. Yeah. What would you do in the city then?
I feel like there's so much to do in the city. Like there's things to see, there's things to eat, there's things to do. There's like just so much attraction concentrated in such a small space. So I feel like it's not a matter of what you would do, but it's a matter of what you can do. Like how much can you pack into it without like overloading yourself?
Yeah, because I think, because I like that's usually like a common argument people make when like they're deciding to move to a city, or like go to, like where should I go to college? Like they're like, oh, like I want to go to this place in a big city because it's fun, you know. Like growing up, or even now, a lot of people be like, I don't really like Texas. I don't like Dallas or Houston or because like there's not much to do here, you know. And I was like growing up, I was like, oh yeah, like there's not much to do. I just sit at home doing nothing. But then like I moved to Austin for college, and like I guess there's technically a lot of stuff to do here.
We don't tap into it.
It's a very young and fun city, but I am still sitting at my apartment and I'm still just spending time in West Campus or campus. So I was like at the end of the day, I was just starting to think like, you know, I don't think it really matters how much stuff there is to do in the city. It just matters how adventurous you are as a person.
Yeah.
Like how much you're willing to try.
Like even just among campus, there's a fuck ton of things to do. Like I walk by a shit ton of events all the time. I just don't give a fuck. But there's actually a lot of things going on.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, how much are you willing to like make use of it? Because I think there is some aspect where like people are like, oh, I don't want to go to this like university event or this school event, like if you're in like high school or something, or like this city event because like it's official. It's not as cool or fun, you know. Like I want to do stuff on my own, I guess. I want to explore the city, or I want to just hang out with my friends. But it's like, I mean, you could do that stuff, and it doesn't really matter where it's from. Like it just matters what you take out of it.
Yeah.
So, I guess in that in mind, I guess I realized that, like, it doesn't really matter to me what city I'm in, because like I'll probably just be chilling at home because I'm introverted. But I guess at the end of the day, I just narrowed my choice of cities to the big cities in the U.S. because they have good Asian food. That is my criteria for moving to a city.
Speaking of moving to cities, so I recently watched an anime movie called Ride Your Wave. And like I had so much to say about that movie, like good and bad. And it was just like, so the premise is like this girl moves back to like this seaside city that she lived in her childhood, because like she was there in childhood and they moved to Tokyo and she moved back for university. He's like, I want to major in like, I don't know, like marine life or something. I don't think they said it super explicitly. But like the real thing is that like she wanted to go there to like surf a bunch. And like that was like her main draw, right? She goes there. And obviously this is more spoilers I'm going to get into. She goes there, she finds a boyfriend who's like basically her opposite. Because she only knows how to surf. Like everything else about her life is like dog shit. Like she tries to cook, it looks like bad. Her apartment looks like bad. Like her life looks like bad except for surfing.
She has no friends.
She has like 2 friends. And it's like, then she meets like this perfect guy who's literally her opposite. He's good at everything except surfing. Like he's like, they sort of like depict him as a saint. Like he's good at everything. He just cannot do no wrong, which I think is super unrealistic. And that was like where the problems I had in this movie start to like occur.
Yeah.
And then so eventually he dies, and that the point of the movie was like overcoming like this trauma and stuff like that, right? But I don't feel like it accurately portrayed overcoming trauma, because like he died and then he became a fucking ghost that could appear in water. So then she became like super attached to like these random like things of water. It's like she would always carry a water bottle, like, and never drink it, just have this water. And then like, so she could talk to him. Eventually she got the like brilliant of idea of blowing up this huge thing filled with water. Like it was like about her size. And then she would summon him in this thing. And they were just like, she just do stuff with that thing all the time. And it's like, dude, this is literally not moving forward. She's standing still. Like she's quote unquote frozen in time, right? And I had so many issues with that because
does the film end like that?
No. Like she became super dependent on him in their relationship. So when he died, she just literally could not function.
Yeah.
And I think those types of relationships are like super flawed.
Yeah, for sure. But like, just very quickly before we go into this, so I just want to know, like, so at the end of the film, does she still just spend time with her water boyfriend?
Okay, so her water boyfriend, like, she gets super traumatized. Like, she can't even, like, like when other like dudes try to flirt with her, she's like, no, I'm taken. And then like she just sounds super fucking crazy. And what happens is the fire, like some people start a fire, and like her boyfriend was a firefighter, and so they like try to stop the fire, and it ends up like they're about to die, and she summons her water boyfriend, and he like puts out this massive fire through like some magic, and then he like gets sent to heaven. And so the movie ends with like her supposedly overcoming her trauma because she didn't want to summon him after a certain point because she's afraid he would disappear, and she summoned him this last time so that he would like rest in peace. And then after that, she just like she's still like not moved on really. It doesn't feel like she actually overcame quote unquote trauma. It still feels like at the end of the movie she's still really attached to this boyfriend. I don't know. It like I watched it because like it had Masaki Yuasa's name on it, and I love that director so much. There's like so much I can say about his other works that aren't this. Yeah. I just felt like it felt like he handled the art but not the story. It felt like the story was super disjunct from the message it was trying to like show.
Yeah. I mean,
that was like a huge ramble. Basically, it's like I don't feel like the actions lined up with the message.
I mean, yeah, I guess like knowing you and like our conversations we had, like this is a film that goes against the very core of your values. Because like, yeah, I guess before I interrupted, you were talking about like relationships that are dependent on each other are like toxic and very bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like they try to paint it like a good thing because he was like a quote unquote saint. But like I don't think any dependent relationship is like actually good. Like I think every individual, no matter what relationship they're in, needs a level of dependency in their life. Like independency.
Yeah. I mean, I think inherently when you're in a relationship with someone, you are
dependent.
Like that's what it means to be vulnerable, you know, which is good. But I guess, yeah, like that other person should not have control over like their life.
Yeah.
You know? But I guess in a way, like in the film, like I guess he used to pick up the saint. It was almost like, oh, like
he literally died saving someone.
Yeah. Like he would be there for her if she needed him, but then I guess if she wasn't there, like he would also be fine.
Yeah, like she could not support him in the same way that he supported her.
Yeah, but that's not how relationships should be.
Yeah, it was not a two-way street.
I guess it's impossible to reach that two-way street or that level of like 50 in, 50 out. I guess. Yeah. But I guess.
But you should strive towards it.
Yeah, I guess your whole life you're just striving towards that, right? Like that's why like when the passionate phase of like a relationship ends, like y'all don't just break up. Or I guess people do now.
Yeah.
You shouldn't just break up. Like you just spend like the rest of your life is just a journey that you embark on together. But it is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people don't really want to do that. I think it's interesting because like you hear a lot of stories or like memes about like older men dating young women. But I think it just goes to show like if you have money and like time, like your passion never like fades away. It'll just fade for like a specific person, but you just don't learn how to move on.
Yeah.
From that, you just chase a new passion, and you're like, oh, I'm alive again, you know. But then you're just always, like, I guess you're not really learning anything. You're just like, you're just experiencing the same highs again, and you're just trying to replicate that for the rest of your life.
Like, on the same note of Masaki Yuasa and like actually talking about this point, there's another film we watched, me and Alex. It was called Night is Young, Walk On Girl. I feel like now that is like a perfect showcase of like passion in college.
For sure.
And like you should not like just sit on your heels and wait for things in college to come to you. Like you should be like take the initiative and like be a go-getter.
Yeah.
Because like in the movie, like it follows two main characters. Like the girl is like super rambunctious. Like it all starts from like her going on this like huge like drinking thing, and it summons this god of like alcohol.
Yeah.
And it just like escalates really crazily to the point where it's just like all these wild events happening one after another. But like the main point of it was like the main dude wanted to get with that girl.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm gonna keep putting myself in front of her, and like, you know, like it's like that bias where you keep seeing something. Yeah, he's like, if I just permeate in her head just like subconsciously, she'll like me.
Yeah.
And like he kept trying to do that. He's like, I just need to get her like feel the vision like all the time.
Yeah.
And then it didn't end up working because like he spent his college just like doing like bullshit stuff like this.
Yeah.
But in the end, when he got sick, like because he was just doing all this bullshit stuff, no one like came to help him, and then like his sickness manifested as like a disease that could kill everyone in the whole town.
Mm-hmm.
But then like the girl came and like cheered him up, and then that's when like he's like it was through all these events that he realized he started to live college. Because like he went through all of these like crazy events, and he was like, damn, like I'm actually alive, like I'm not just like, you know, like a husk walking through life.
Yeah, for sure. It's even then it's like it's similar to the manga chapter we read. Mm-hmm. It was like it's about a guy who like doesn't know what he's passionate about, and he's just chasing stuff to like kind of fit a role in society, kind of just to fit in. But I guess over time he's like, hey, these experiences aren't invalid because like I've been able to learn something. Like, sure, maybe some of this stuff, like, wasn't the best use of my time, but now I know, like, how to treasure life, how to treasure my relationships. And thankfully, it was a happy ending. Because when he was going that monologue during the sickness, I was like, I really feel for this man.
Yeah.
I was, like, getting cold this whole movie.
Yeah, I know.
Like, basically in the film, like, everyone's just taking advantage of this guy in this quest to appease the girl. So
yeah, like, when they say take advantage, it was just, like, small things. Like, he was trying to get with the girl during, like, this huge, like, guerrilla play.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, on this college university, there's, like, you're not allowed to, like, hold plays or something. Yeah. And so, like, the theater club, like, holds guerrilla plays, and they, like, stage all this shit, and they're like, oh, we're gonna do it when their guard is down over here where they don't expect it, and then, like, do all this random shit and just hold, and so they're all building up to this, like, final act. And in the final act, like, the main girl is, like, put in a really big role. Mm-hmm. And then they like take advantage of this guy and they put him in the other main role because they know that he wants to go after the girl.
Yeah, yeah, and even the side characters, like when it was the guy who's writing the play. He was searching for his love. But the reason for his love was like it was fate, you know, because like apple bounced off both of their heads, and I guess in a lot of ways like a lot of people like think love is like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like they want. I guess we talked about before too after what reviews like the idea of a soulmate, you know?
Yes.
It's like hey, we've gone through something similar, but I don't know you too well, but you're my soulmate, and like I'm fine with getting to know you for the rest of my life. And I think like that, like the result of that, like getting to know someone for the rest of life is good, but I don't know if that's like obviously in the film was like the dude was getting kind of crazy.
Yeah.
He like refused to change his underwear or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's like the idea of fate, and depicted as like love. Like I feel like a lot of people, it's like a very romantic view, but like a lot of people do have that view of love.
When we talk about romantic, it's more along the lines of like classic romanticism rather than like romantic like, you know, hard eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's just more like, I guess a better word is like idealistic, you know.
Yeah.
Like rose color tints, you know.
Yeah.
Like rose colored lenses. It's like that basically, but. Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways I was like, huh. A lot, as you can tell through this conversation, a lot of our insecurities are, you know, are the reason why like, we really like these films.
Yeah.
And these stories, because they project a lot of our insecurities, but the character overcomes them.
But I think what's really interesting is that like, we're not the only ones that feel these, because someone has to think of this and most likely feel it in order to like, want to bring this feeling onto screen.
Yeah. And I guess what's crazy is like some dude from Japan. This story was written like a long time ago too, like probably when we were in like early high school or something.
Yeah.
But he had to like he obviously like he wrote the story to give a message, you know. Like he was able to do that captured like our feelings so well, and like we're people who live on the other side of the globe a couple years later. So I think that is something that's beautiful about storytelling. Like it captures like the universal human experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. It's I think a lot of manga and anime, they can come like as much as we figure them as like Japanese films, like they're just as capable as like delivering a potent message as like an American or like Western film that we're like more I guess culturally accustomed to.
I guess a good example of that is Parasite.
Yeah. It's like like we watched Parasite the other day.
So good.
Me and a friend who we watched with like it's like me, Ben, and like the friend, or actually it was just John. I keep on forgetting that like I want to like not say these people's name out of respect, but then I remembered he's already been on the podcast, and I literally mentioned his name when I talked about The Stand. Basically, John watched this film like 4 times. I watched this film like
Several times.
Like I think when I watched it with Ben was like my second time, and then Ben watched it for the first time, and like there's a lot of class commentary in the film, and
but like they said something about it. It's not that it's just like Western films can talk about Western things.
Yeah,
like this was an Eastern film talking about like very clearly like human experience sort of thing.
I mean, obviously it was targeted toward like a South Korean audience, but like the fact that it's making so many like it's getting so many international accolades and like it's speaking to so many people is like there's something universal about that, right? And I think that's like when I realized that like culture is not ever gonna seem dramatic, right? Like we can walk in Japan right now, and we'll understand like 75% of what's going on. Like we can like aside from like language, I guess like. We'll be like okay-ish, but it's like the little details, you know, that like we're not really gonna understand, and that builds up, you know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, there's all sorts of like in the film, spoiler alert, like the dad kills, like the main character's dad kills like the people they're serving, because like of an insecurity he has, right? And then it's like it's about saving face and pride. Like he was tired of like he couldn't provide for his family.
He was also getting disrespected. He's like. He just lost his mind. Like it wasn't even like an intentional thing. Like at the end in the film, he's like crying and he's like, "I'm sorry, Mr. Park or whatever. Like I didn't mean this to happen." But in some ways, like that reflects like a cultural aspects, you know. But I guess the ideas of like the poor versus the rich. The actually, I was reading something about it. It like there was also like some depiction of like poor versus poorer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially when you're talking like when the main characters catch the original parasites of the film, like I think like not like a lesser film, but like traditionally like films would be like they would depict like the poor people like band together and they virtuously overcome their obstacles.
It's like some Robin Hood shit.
Yeah, and like they fight against like the evil rich people. But what really happens is the poor versus the poor people start like fighting each other to get like scraps off the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very interesting because like everyone on that side, like you could see like you understood why they did stuff, and they weren't like they were people, and they had good and bad, and I think that's what made Parasite, such a good film. But yeah, I guess we're running a little over, but I guess all in all is like in this unfiltered, I guess more stream of consciousness talk we had. It's like I guess we really appreciate like anime and manga and like I guess just film in general because of like the meanings they can provide, and like they're able to like speak a message. Sometimes they're able to like even like say like explain stuff that you're feeling, but you don't really know how to like put it into words.
Like for example, the feeling that we talked about in like that manga chapter, the Masaki Yuasa film.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like being able to like have that is like, especially I guess like when you don't have like a friend to talk to about it, or like your friends aren't going through that same thing, like I guess it's comforting to know like, hey, like there's like this like whole medium that's able to like help you feel not alone. Yeah, and I think that's pretty powerful. But yeah, any like closing thoughts before like we wrap up?
I don't know, like me and Alex were a little nervous prior to like doing this because we're like, damn, what are we gonna talk about? We're kind of like just YOLOing this, but then we're like, you know what, YOLOing it will make it better.
Yeah, I guess like something we do a lot outside of this podcast is like kind of have these type of talks. But yeah, I think this kind of harkens back to your original vision, where it's like we're having a real conversation. There just happens to be a camera, like it's a recording device. But yeah, I think in the future we'll try to do more podcasts with just us two. Probably like half of the episodes coming out will probably just be us two. The other half will be with guests. But I think the ones with us will probably feel more raw and unscripted.
Yeah,
like we'll just be talking, kind of reflecting on whatever has happened recently in their life. So
we're even like contemplating calling the episodes with just us Nuanced Ramblings.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I guess thank you all for listening.
If you stuck around this long and you somehow are just the right demographic to provide us like a backdrop, please do, because I don't know how much longer we're gonna use this wave.
Dude, this tape is not that strong. It's gonna fall off pretty soon. So
yeah.
Hit us up. Want to showcase your art abilities? We are more than down to take it. But yeah, But yeah, this is nuanced nonsense. We're not experts. We just like to ramble. But yeah, signing out.